Hey guys, and welcome to a brief Mobile World Congress 2018 roundup video. I'm on the show floor in Barcelona taking a look at a whole bunch of different things that have been launched at the show. Of course, a big show for smartphone and other mobile device launches. And to kick things off, we're going to take a look at the biggest launch of the show, the new Samsung Galaxy S9. Had plenty of hands-on time at the event, and while it's not the biggest update ever as far as smartphones go, it does pack some neat features. As far as the design is concerned, the 5.8-inch S8 and the 6.2-inch S8 Plus feel very similar to the last-gen Galaxy S8 line, with curved glass on both sides and metal rim. All the good features of the previous phone return, including the microSD card slot and headphone jack. However, this new S9 does alter the position of the fingerprint reader such that you won't put grime on the camera lens every time you try to reach up and use it. The key new feature is the adjustable aperture main camera, which actually modifies the aperture physically rather than in software like a lot of dual lens smartphones. The auto mode will choose between the f2.4 or f1.5 apertures depending on the lighting conditions, with the wider f1.5 preferred in low light, and you'll use the f2.4 in daylight. You can also choose an aperture yourself in the manual mode, and there's noticeably more bokeh from the f1.5 lens, so a neat little feature there. This is a feature I've been waiting for in smartphone cameras for a while, so I'm really excited the Galaxy S9 is the first to include something like this. Also new to the camera is a 960 frames per second slow motion mode at a 720p resolution. This is all made possible by the latest Sony CMOS sensors, which include DRAM stacked into the sensor module for extremely fast capture speeds of both photos and these slow motion videos. The slow motion effect is very cool, though the latest Sony flagships do the same thing at a higher resolution. More on that later. The S9 can also do a whopping 4K capture at 120 frames per second, which is a bit crazy. I should also mention the S9 Plus is the only phone of the two that includes a second telephoto camera, providing a 2x zoom on a 12 megapixel sensor with optical image stabilization. In fact, both cameras are 12 megapixels with OIS. Samsung spent a fair bit of time at their launch event on their Animoji ripoff called AR Emojis. The feature allows you to create a cartoony 3D version of yourself that mimics your expressions, though it's pretty uncanny valley and often doesn't work all that well in replicating your appearance. Once again, the Galaxy S9 comes in both Qualcomm and Exynos variants for different markets. Those in the US, China and a few other select markets will get the Qualcomm Snapdragon 845 inside, while those in other regions will get the Samsung Exynos 9810. There will be some performance and battery life differences as always, though both variants pack roughly the same cellular connectivity from their integrated modems. The S9 also includes stereo speakers for the first time, with the bottom firing speaker combining with the speaker above the display for a better audio experience. It was hard to gauge just how good these speakers are in the loud hands-on area at the Samsung event, but it's nice to finally see the Galaxy line moving away from the single terrible speaker of the past. Samsung are still using 2960 by 1440 AMOLED screens for their Galaxy S9 devices, and there's no word on whether these are improved in any way from the previous iterations. They looked great at the event, but once again we'll need to do a bit more testing at a later date. That's really it for the Samsung Galaxy S9. Again, not a massive upgrade. The main things of course being those adjustable apertures for the camera. Design very similar, as I said earlier, so this should be a very popular release of the year, I would think, especially with a lot of those camera updates. But yeah, it isn't really revolutionizing anything too much there from Samsung. One of the coolest devices I saw at the show is the Huawei Matebook X Pro. The key selling point here is the 13.9-inch 3K full view display with extremely thin bezels, leading to a 91% screen to body ratio. The laptop looks awesome with such slim bezels, thinner than the Dell XPS 13 by a fair way. The display quality is bright, up to 450 nits, and excellent quality. Plus I prefer the 3:2 aspect ratio for laptops to, the standard 16:9. It's high performance too, with an Intel Core i5 8250U or i7 8550U and a discrete NVIDIA GeForce MX150 graphics. It seems this year we'll be getting a lot more 13-inch ultra-thins with this Intel plus NVIDIA combination, which will be a real challenger to AMD's Ryzen mobile chips. Despite this hardware, the Matebook X Pro also includes a 57 watt-hour battery, which is fairly typical for this sort of laptop. In other words, the battery size is not hampered by the discrete GPU taking up physical space inside. The build quality is outstanding. If you love thin metal chassis, you'll love the Matebook X Pro. It's a very solid chassis, yet weighs just 1.33 kilos and comes in at under 15 millimeters thick. This isn't, particularly amazing for a 13-inch laptop. However, it is good to see Huawei didn't unnecessarily push for slimness, instead ensuring a decent battery capacity and plenty of performance. There are a couple of downsides. I had some hands-on time with the unit, and the keyboard has a pretty shallow travel distance similar to the latest MacBooks, which may get irritating after long periods of use. There's also an unusual pop-up camera in between the F6 and F7 keys, which allows Huawei to get such slim bezels. However, the angle is just as bad as the Dell XPS 13 in my opinion, so definitely some compromises there. I'm not sure there's a good solution for webcams with slim bezel laptops, but as someone that rarely uses the webcam, I don't really care all that much. The laptop looks outstanding in person, could be one of the best ultra-thin laptops of the year. However, it won't be cheap, starting at 1,499 euros for a Core i5, 8GB of RAM and a 256GB SSD. You'll definitely need to pay for the design with this one. Huawei also showed off the MediaPad M5, which is a high-end 8.4 or 10.5-inch Android tablet powered by Huawei's last-gen Kirin 960 SoC. I used it briefly and it's really well built with great performance, but are Android tablets even a thing anymore? It's actually pretty surprising Huawei has released a high-end Android tablet in 2018, but I guess there's enough demand for that sort of product. Clearly the star of Huawei's MWC is the new Matebook, though the MediaPad may interest, a handful of people. Another major launch at MWC was the Sony Xperia XZ2 and the XZ2 Compact, with Sony choosing to increase the amount of letters and numbers used in their flagship handset name, perhaps for the worst. While the general design of these handsets remains similar to the Xperia XZ and the Xperia Z lines of old, Sony has moved with the times and they have chosen to use an 18:9 aspect ratio display with these handsets. Unfortunately, it is just a 1080p class resolution, 2160 by 1080 to be specific, which is overshadowed by the 1440p resolutions we see on a lot of other flagships these days. However, it does support HDR, including SDR to HDR enhancements through Sony's X-Reality engine. It's a feature that's never really impressed me all that much in the past, but SDR to HDR should produce better results than just crappy saturation boosts like they've used previously. Moving to an 18:9 display has led to slimmer bezels, but we're still not in the same realm as the best slim bezel handsets currently available. Sony phones have always had very chunky bezels though, so these new XZ2 handsets are a big improvement in this regard. The rear of the Xperia XZ2 has changed a fair bit compared to its predecessor, moving to a glossy glass panel with sloping edges and a centered camera. The design reminds me a fair bit of HTC's latest smartphones, as well as the old Nokia Lumia handsets. I reckon the low down camera position could get a bit annoying and easy to smudge during usage though, so something to watch out for. Annoyingly, there is no headphone jack on these handsets, though you do get a USB-C port and a microSD card slot. And while the camera is largely unchanged from a hardware perspective compared to the XZ Premium from last year, there are two cool new additions. HDR video recording, which is a first for any smartphone, and an upgrade to the 960 frames per second slow motion mode that allows it to capture in 1080p. While we are getting 960 FPS slow-mo with the Galaxy S9, it won't be able to match the clarity of what's provided with the XZ2, and from what I used of the mode at MWC, it produces some stunning imagery. The XZ2 is also capable of 3D selfies. Simply move the phone around your head in the selfie mode and it will capture a full 3D model of your face that you can manipulate. Unlike the Galaxy S9's AR emojis, this feature works really well and actually produces lifelike models. It's a neat feature, though I'm not quite sure what the real world use case is. It seems like one of those things that's cool in demos but not practically useful. Performance-wise, we're looking at a Snapdragon 845 with both the XZ2 and XZ2 Compact getting essentially the same hardware across the board, including the camera. These phones are extremely snappy and support gigabit LTE, though of course the Snapdragon 845 will be coming to plenty of phones this year. On the XZ2 Compact specifically, I was surprised how chunky the phone felt to use. It's a lot thicker than the standard 5.7-inch XZ2. However, with such a small 5-inch display and very little competition in the smaller high-end phone market, the Compact should once again be highly attractive to a certain segment of phone buyers. No word on pricing for these phones, however, they do seem like some of Sony's best devices in a while. I'm a bit concerned that there haven't been many camera updates outside of the new HDR and slow motion features, but the design changes are a step in the right direction. Hopefully a few people actually buy these handsets this time. Sony has struggled in that regard in the past. As for LG, no major launches at MWC this year, no G7 or anything like that, but we did get the LG V30S ThinkQ, which I honestly don't know why this is a product that actually exists. It is just an LG V30 with slightly more RAM and storage, complete with new AI-driven camera features that are being backported to the LG V30. So yeah, considering it is just the same hardware otherwise down to the chassis, display, battery and SoC, it still uses the Qualcomm Snapdragon 835. It seems strange that they needed to release this interim device at all. They should have just released a new high-capacity V30, called it the same thing, and released a software update to all V30s that pushes the AI camera to all. So yeah, not quite sure what LG is doing with the ThinkQ, and it has a very strange product name as well. If you are interested in the AI camera features, basically it analyzes the scene and the objects within to determine which camera mode is the most appropriate to get the best shot. It can detect objects in the camera preview and puts text on the screen to let you know what things are. Kind of neat to see it in action. And there's also a new ultra bright low light mode that improves what the V30 was offering before. But again, these features are being backported to the V30, so yeah, not a really significant launch here for LG, and hopefully we'll see some of these AI camera features come to their upcoming flagship launches throughout the rest of the year. You know, a successor to the G6 and a real successor to the V30. Anyway, that's it for this first look video at some of the things I've been doing at Mobile World Congress 2018. Still a lot to look at the show. We'll be back later in the week with another secondary roundup video, you'd have to say, looking at some of the other things I've seen so far at the show. So yeah, as always, check back on Hardware Unboxed and TechSpot for more content from Mobile World Congress, and I'll catch you in the very next video.